This is Jacey Zembal of the Wolfpack Central, part of the Rivals.com network. NC State is looking for a coach, and the fans are hungry for Will Wade. Why does that name sound familiar? It's because he was kind of definitely part of the last coaching search, and kind of a quiet part of the search before that. So we'll start with the origin of Will Wade. He went to Clemson. He was a manager on the basketball team. He ended up getting hired as an assistant coach. He coached at Harvard with Tommy Amaker back in the day. He's been very successful, was a very successful assistant coach at VCU under Shaka Smart. When NC State went after Shaka Smart in 2011, Will Wade was part of that staff and was one of the key reasons VCU became a recruiting power. You know, the joke back then was that nobody raced across the state of North Carolina looking for recruits like Will Wade could. You know, I'm not saying VCU had a ton of North Carolina natives on the roster, but Will had the pulse of North Carolina on the recruiting sense. You know, he eventually became the head coach at VCU at a very young age. He accomplished probably more under the age of 40 than most coaches do. And then, you know, he had his chance to be the NC State coach. 2017, the Wolfpack zeroed in on him. It was fascinating because it was Will Wade at VCU, Kevin Keatts at UNC Wilmington. Now, I always said that one thing, I felt Keatts really wanted the job. You know, Will Wade had options. You know, that's kind of like what he learned under Shaka Smart at VCU. You know, Shaka eventually left to go to Texas, which is obviously a school that has incredible resources. But Will learned when Shaka had many schools chase after him. I remember Shaka Smart turned down Illinois and Minnesota, and I believe in UCLA at one point. So there was a lot of different places that Shaka could have gone, but he was picky. And I thought Will was kind of in that same position because, A, they were winning big. They were doing well at VCU. So, you know, back then you actually knew who your team was going to be the next year. He was able to plan for the future. So he knew if he stayed at VCU, they were going to probably keep on winning. The one dynamic was what would happen with Will Wade and his alma mater, Clemson. Well, Brad Bunnell never ended up losing his job at Clemson, so that option was eliminated. Then after NC State decided to formally go after and get Kevin Keatts, Will Wade quickly moved on to go to LSU. Obviously at LSU, the record is pretty clear. Dude got a lot of great players. You know, I watched him recruit some top 50 kids from all over the South. You know, some of them made the NBA, but it was clear that all the thought of Will Wade as a recruiting power was proving to be true. Obviously, the FBI investigation derailed all those achievements at LSU. He won, but it wasn't enough to be able to keep his job. You know, he fought it as long as he could, and I think he lasted maybe a year or two longer than many expected. But now people look back, and you know, Bruce Pearl's still coaching at Auburn, and he's thriving. So he was also part of the FBI investigation. But, you know, that is basketball, and it's funny, all the things that Will Wade was accused of doing, or did do, is now okay. It's all legal. Pay for play is what college basketball probably always has been, but it's clearly what it is now. So Wade ended up, I guess, I don't know if you would call it purgatory, but he went to McNeese State. And everybody was anticipating, you know, a slow rebuild, or, you know, that it would take some time in a smaller school like McNeese State last year. And then all of a sudden, he just kept winning and winning and winning. And, you know, it wasn't with big star players. It wasn't with big name recruits, but he won. And then I watched him in the portal this past spring. He brought in players who had played at Arizona State, who had played at St. Louis. Joe Charles, who was a nice player at UL Lafayette. You know, he had a great mid-major recruiting class for transfers, and they're rolling again this year. So, you know, what is next with Will? We know at some point he's going to end up at a big-name school. Could be NC State. Maybe he'll hold out to be a SEC school in the future, or a Big 12. I mean, he's 43 years old. That's the part that's kind of crazy about the Will Wade story, is that after everything he's accomplished, he's still only 43. So, I'll be curious. It's going to take a lot of money to get a Will Wade. He obviously knows the program way better than most of the other candidates that NC State could go after because of the last 2 coaching searches. He probably has followed the program from a distance. He knows this area. He'd hit the ground running in recruiting. There's just no question about it. He obviously knows how to navigate the transfer portal. Most of the talk last year for Will Wade centered around places like Arkansas and Louisville and Ole Miss. All places that end up hiring coaches. But I don't know what will happen with him this time. Obviously it's going to take the right fit for him and take a school that will embrace everything that he's done in the past. But I don't know, I have no inside info on, what he's thinking this time around. But I do know that Will Wade at one point would have loved to have been the coach at NC State. It's just a question of whether if time has changed that on both sides. But I do know this. He's the guy that the fans will probably zero in on the most. This is Jacey Zembal from the Wolfpack Central. And you can see our stuff on Twitter. The sign up is on the webpage, ncstate.rivals.com. Please sign up. Great time to sign up. And the nice thing about coaching changes is that not only is that going to happen, expect a whole lot of recruiting to happen afterwards. Thanks.